The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Dr. Margaret Patterson's office on the third floor of Columbus Children's Medical Center. Inside, 3-year-old Emma Hayes sat motionless in the corner, her tiny frame curled into a chair that swallowed her whole. Her eyes, once bright and curious according to her mother, now stared at nothing, looking through the colorful toys scattered across the floor as if they existed in another dimension. Dr. Patterson had been a pediatric psychologist for 17 years. She'd seen children who'd witnessed unspeakable things, children who'd survived horrors that would break most adults. But there was something about Emma's silence that chilled her to the bone. It wasn't defiance or fear. It was absence, as if the part of the child that connected to the world had simply unplugged. "Mrs. Hayes," Dr. Patterson said gently, setting down her pen. "In the 23 months since the accident, has Emma spoken even once, even a single word?" Sarah Hayes sat on the edge of her chair, her hands twisted together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She was 32 but looked 50, the weight of worry aging her in real time. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Not one word, not mama, not dada. Nothing." Michael Hayes stood by the window, unable to sit, unable to stay still. He was a construction foreman, a man who solved problems with his hands, who built things. But he couldn't build a bridge to his own daughter. "She used to be so alive," he said, his reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. "She sang all the time, made up songs about her stuffed animals, about clouds, about cereal. She talked so much we joke about it." "Tell me about the accident again," Dr. Patterson said, though she'd heard the story twice before. Sometimes, parents remembered new details in subsequent tellings. Sarah's eyes closed. The scene played behind her eyelids like a horror film on repeat. "It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was driving Emma home from daycare. We were at a red light singing. She was singing 'Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.' Then, the sound, this deafening crash. Her breath hitched. A semi-truck ran the red light, hit us from behind. We spun across 2 lanes. The car flipped." "But Emma wasn't injured," Dr. Patterson prompted softly. "Not a scratch." Michael turned from the window, his face twisted with anguish. "The car seat did its job perfectly. The airbags deployed. Sarah had a broken wrist and 3 cracked ribs. I got the call at work that my whole world had almost ended. But Emma, physically perfect. The ER doctors called it a miracle." "Some miracles come with invisible prices," Dr. Patterson murmured. Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "When the paramedics pulled her out, she was silent, just staring. At the hospital, we thought she was in shock. The doctors said it would pass, but days became weeks. Weeks became months. She stopped singing, stopped talking, stopped making any sounds at all." Dr. Patterson glanced at Emma, who hadn't moved, hadn't reacted to her parents' voices recounting that terrible day. "And she can hear. All the auditory tests came back normal." "Perfect hearing," Michael confirmed. "She responds to sounds. If a door slams, she'll look. She understands everything we say. If I tell her to get her shoes, she does. She's not deaf, not intellectually disabled. She's just locked inside herself." "We've tried everything," Sarah continued, her voice rising with desperation. "Speech therapy 3 times a week, play therapy, music therapy. That one hurt the most because she used to love music. We got her a tablet with communication apps. She'll point to pictures sometimes, but mostly she just gestures, nods or shakes her head. Sometimes she takes our hands and leads us to what she wants." Dr. Patterson made notes, her brow furrowed. "How does she interact with other children?" "She doesn't," Michael said flatly. "At daycare, she sits alone. The other kids tried at first, but when Emma never responded, they moved on. 3-year-olds don't have patience for silence. Now they play around her like she's a piece of furniture." Sarah's sob broke through the room. "I've watched her at the playground. Other children her age are having conversations, making friends, laughing. Emma stands at the edge, watching, always watching, like she's behind glass, observing a world she can no longer be part of." Last month, Michael added, his voice heavy, her cousin Lucy had a birthday party. Lucy's also 3, they were born 2 weeks apart, used to be inseparable. At the party, Lucy opened her presents and all the kids were cheering. Emma just sat there silent while everyone sang happy birthday. Lucy tried to get her to play, but he trailed off, unable to finish. Emma just walked away, Sarah finished. Found a quiet corner and sat alone. Lucy cried. She thought Emma didn't like her anymore. Dr. Patterson set her clipboard aside and leaned forward. I want to be honest with you. Selective mutism following trauma in children this young is complex. Emma's brain experienced something so overwhelming that it shut down her verbal communication as a protective mechanism. The challenge is that the longer she remains silent, the harder it becomes to break through. Neural pathways that govern speech need use to stay strong. So what do we do? Sarah asked, desperation edging toward panic. We can't just accept that our daughter will never speak again. She's 3 years old. She has her whole life ahead of her. Dr. Patterson stood and walked to her bookshelf, pulling out a brochure. There's one avenue we haven't explored. It's unconventional, but I've seen remarkable results. She handed Sarah the pamphlet. Animal-assisted therapy, specifically working with trained therapy dogs. Michael looked skeptical. We have a cat. Emma ignores it. This is different, Dr. Patterson explained. These are specially trained animals working with certified handlers. There's something about the non-judgmental presence of a dog, the unconditional acceptance, that reaches traumatized children in ways humans can't. Dogs don't expect speech. They don't ask questions. They simply exist beside the child, creating a safe space. Sarah stared at the brochure showing a child hugging a golden retriever. Do you really think this could work? I think, Dr. Patterson said carefully, that Emma is in there, waiting for the right key to unlock her voice. We've tried traditional approaches. Perhaps it's time to try something extraordinary. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Emma remained silent in her chair, her small hand clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, the only possession from before the accident she still acknowledged. Somewhere across the city, a German shepherd named Rex was finishing his shift, unaware that his life was about to intersect with a little girl who'd forgotten how to speak. The universe was aligning. The pieces were moving into place. And nothing would ever be the same again. Officer Jake Martinez wasn't supposed to be a cop. At least, that's what his father had said when Jake turned down a 6-figure salary at a prestigious tech company to join the Columbus Police Academy at age 28. You have an MBA from Northwestern, his father had argued. You're throwing your life away. But Jake knew something his father didn't. Money couldn't fill the hollow space inside him where purpose was supposed to live. Now 6 years later, at 34, Jake sat in his patrol car outside Franklin Park, watching Rex demolish a training dummy with precision that bordered on art. The German Shepherd was magnificent, 90 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and an intensity that made criminals think twice. But Jake knew the truth that his K-9 unit colleagues didn't quite understand. Rex was too much for this job. That's it, Rex, release, Jake called. Rex immediately dropped the training sleeve and trotted back, his tongue lolling in what looked like a grin. But Jake saw what others missed, the slight tension in Rex's shoulders, the way his ears flickered at every sound, processing, analyzing, feeling everything around him with an intensity that exhausted him. Sergeant Dave Morrison approached, clipboard in hand. Martinez, we need to talk about Rex. Jake's stomach tightened. His numbers are excellent, sir. 12 missing persons found, 8 suspects apprehended, and... I know his stats, Morrison sighed, removing his cap to run a hand through his graying hair. That's not the issue. Last week, during the domestic disturbance call on Maple Street, what happened? Jake remembered. They'd arrived to find a man threatening his wife. Standard procedure. Rex should have stayed focused on the suspect. Instead, the couple's 5-year-old daughter had been hiding under the kitchen table, and Rex had refused to leave her side. He'd positioned himself between the child and the chaos, whining softly, ignoring every command until the little girl was safe. He protected the child, Jake said carefully. He disobeyed direct orders, Morrison countered, but his tone wasn't harsh. Jake, this is the fourth time. Rex washed out of 2 other K-9 programs before you got him. You know why? Too sensitive, they said, too emotionally reactive. He's a great dog, but... He's exactly what the world needs, Jake interrupted, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. Sir, with respect, maybe we're measuring the wrong things. Maybe a dog who cares too much isn't a failure. Maybe he's just different. Morrison studied him for a long moment. You really believe that? I know it. Jake looked at Rex, who was now sitting at attention but had his gaze fixed on a group of children playing soccer in the distance. Every school visit, every community event, I watch him. He doesn't go to the loud kids, the confident ones. He finds the quiet ones. The kid sitting alone at lunch. The teenager with cuts on her arms hiding under long sleeves. The boy who flinches when adults raise their voices. Rex sees them and somehow he knows exactly what they need. Morrison was quiet, considering. Finally, he said, there's a community safety fair next Saturday. You and Rex are scheduled to do a demonstration. Maybe pay attention to what he gravitates toward. If you're right about this gift of his, we might be using him wrong. After Morrison left, Jake sat on the grass and Rex immediately curled up beside him, resting his massive head on Jake's thigh. They don't understand you, do they, boy? Jake murmured, scratching behind Rex's ears. Join the club. Jake's mind drifted back to why he'd really left corporate America. The panic attacks had started during his second year at the consulting firm. Success, money, prestige, none of it mattered when he couldn't breathe at his desk, when the meaninglessness of it all crashed over him like a wave. His therapist had asked him, "What makes you feel alive?" The answer had come immediately, helping people who can't help themselves. 6 months later, he was at the police academy, and 3 years after that, he met Rex at a K-9 training facility, scheduled to be reassigned for the 3rd time. The trainer had been apologetic. He's got all the skills, but he's too soft. Gets distracted by emotional situations. We need dogs that stay focused on the mission. Jake had looked into Rex's intelligent brown eyes and seen a mirror of himself, someone who felt too much in a world that demanded emotional armor. I'll take him, Jake had said. They'd been partners ever since, and while Rex's record wasn't conventional, Jake knew they were making a difference in ways that couldn't be quantified on a report. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Maria, a special education teacher. Jake, you know anything about animal therapy for traumatized kids? One of my colleagues has a student with selective mutism. They're desperate. Jake stared at the message, then at Rex, who had lifted his head as if sensing the shift in Jake's attention. What do you think, partner? Think you could help a kid find their voice? Rex's tail thumped against the ground. Jake typed back, actually, yes, I've been researching it. Rex has a gift with hurting kids. Have them call me. But the call never came from Maria's colleague. Instead, fate had other plans. That evening, Jake took Rex to their favorite spot, a quiet hill overlooking the city. They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jake had learned to cherish these moments of peace. In the silence, he could hear his own thoughts sort through the chaos of the day. You know what I think, Rex, Jake said softly. I think we're not broken. I think we're just wired to care more. And maybe, just maybe, that's going to matter to someone someday. Someone who needs exactly what we have to give. Rex leaned harder against Jake's side, and in that moment, Jake felt a certainty he couldn't explain, a sense that something significant was coming. Something that would prove that their sensitivity, their deep empathy, wasn't a weakness but a superpower. Across the city, Sarah Hayes was reading the brochure about animal-assisted therapy to her husband, hope and skepticism warring in her voice. The universe was weaving its threads. pulling Jake and Rex toward a little girl who'd forgotten how to speak, toward a moment that would change all their lives forever. Rex stood suddenly, his ears pricked toward the city below, as if he could already hear Emma's silent call across the distance. "What is it, boy?" Jake asked. But Rex just stared into the gathering darkness, waiting for a purpose he could sense but not yet see. Soon, very soon, Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect September weather that felt like a gift: crisp air, cloudless sky, and sunshine that turned everything golden. The Columbus Community Safety Fair transformed Franklin Park into a carnival of flashing lights, sirens, and excited children's voices. Food trucks lined the perimeter, the smell of funnel cakes and hot dogs mixing with freshly cut grass. Sarah Hayes gripped the steering wheel of their Honda, knuckles white, as she pulled into the crowded parking lot. In the back seat, Emma sat motionless in her car seat, her eyes tracking the chaos outside with that unsettling stillness that had become her default state. "We don't have to stay long," Michael said from the passenger seat, reading his wife's tension. 20 minutes. We walk around, Emma sees some fire trucks, we go home. No pressure." But Sarah heard what he didn't say. Another failed attempt. Another reminder of what we've lost. Dr. Patterson had suggested the outing. "Controlled exposure to stimulating environments," she'd said. "Sometimes a change in setting can trigger unexpected responses." Sarah had heard the subtext. We're running out of options. They made their way through the fair, Emma's small hand clasped in Sarah's. The little girl didn't pull away or resist, but she didn't engage either. She was a ghost moving through a world of the living, present but not participating. A fire truck's horn blared. Emma didn't flinch. Children raced past, shrieking with laughter. Emma didn't turn her head. A clown offered her a balloon animal. Emma stared through him until he awkwardly moved on. "Ice cream," Michael suggested desperately, pointing toward a vendor. Emma didn't respond, didn't even look. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Come back to us, baby. Please come back." Then, carried on the wind, came a sound that stopped them all: a dog's bark. Sharp, commanding, unmistakably canine. Emma's head snapped up. Sarah's breath caught. It was the first voluntary, rapid movement her daughter had made in months. Emma. The little girl's eyes were scanning the crowd with sudden intensity, searching for the source of that sound. Another bark echoed across the park, and Emma's hand slipped from Sarah's grasp. "Emma," Sarah lunged, but Michael caught her arm. "Wait," he whispered, "look at her." Emma was walking, not her usual shuffle but purposeful strides toward the far end of the fair where a crowd had gathered. The sign read, "K9 Unit Demonstration." Sarah and Michael followed, hearts pounding, as their daughter navigated through the crowd with determination they hadn't seen since before the accident. People parted instinctively, adults looking down in surprise at the small, serious child moving past them like she was being pulled by an invisible thread. At the demonstration area, Officer Jake Martinez was midway through Rex's tracking routine. The German Shepherd was magnificent, moving with power and precision as he followed a scent trail to locate a hidden volunteer. The crowd applauded as Rex found his target, but Jake felt his partner's attention suddenly fracture. Rex's head turned sharply to the left, his entire body going rigid. Jake had seen this before, the way Rex sensed things before anyone else. "Rex, heel," Jake commanded, but the dog's focus was absolute, locked on something in the crowd. Someone small, someone moving toward them. Emma reached the barrier rope that separated the demonstration area from spectators. She stopped, her eyes fixed on Rex with an intensity that made Sarah's chest constrict. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, as if Emma had been searching for something her whole life and had finally found it. Rex made a sound Jake had never heard before, a low, questioning whine that vibrated with something almost like wonder. The dog pulled against his lead, not aggressively, but insistently. "Rex, what?" Jake started, then saw her. A tiny girl, maybe 3 years old, with dark curls and enormous eyes. She was staring at Rex like he was the answer to a question she'd forgotten how to ask. The crowd had gone quiet, sensing something unspoken, something sacred happening. Jake made a decision that went against every protocol. "Stay," he commanded Rex, then unclipped the lead. "Slow approach. Easy, boy." Rex moved forward with a gentleness that contradicted his size. He approached Emma as if she were made of glass, his body language completely transformed. Ears soft, tail in a slow, careful wag, head lowered to her level. Sarah started forward. "Emma, honey, be careful." But Jake raised a hand, his voice gentle but firm. "Wait, please, watch." Emma and Rex were 3 feet apart, 2 feet, 1 foot. The little girl raised her hand, trembling, fingers extended. Time seemed to crystallize, to hold its breath. Rex closed the final distance and pressed his nose into her palm. The contact was electric. Emma's entire body shuddered, and for the first time in 18 months her face transformed. The blankness cracked, shattered, fell away like a discarded mask. Wonder flooded her features, followed by something that looked like relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. A sound emerged from Emma's throat, not a word, but a hum, a vocalization, the first voluntary sound her parents had heard since the accident. It was fragile, tentative, but it was something. Rex's response was immediate. His tail began wagging harder and he stepped closer, allowing Emma to touch him fully. The little girl's hands sank into his fur and she leaned forward, pressing her face into his neck. Michael's hand found Sarah's. They stood frozen, tears streaming down both their faces, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid this moment would evaporate like morning mist. Jake knelt nearby, his throat tight. He'd seen Rex react to hurting people before, but never like this. The dog was completely still, barely breathing, as if he understood that the small person clinging to him was made of fragile, precious things that could break with one wrong move. The crowd remained silent. Even the children had stopped their noise. 200 people watched a 3-year-old girl and a police dog create a moment of magic that defied explanation. Emma made another sound, still not a word but closer, a syllable trying to form. Her small body was shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was emotion, enormous and overwhelming, flooding through the cracks in the dam that had held her silent for so long. Rex made his soft, questioning whine again, and Emma pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. Brown meeting brown, human meeting canine, broken meeting healer. And in that gaze, something profound occurred. Jake saw it. Sarah saw it. Even Michael, who'd been the skeptical one, saw it. Rex wasn't just a dog in that moment. He was a bridge, a key, a light in darkness showing Emma the way back to the world of the living. Emma's lips moved. No sound came out, but the intention was there. She was trying to speak. Sarah's sob broke the silence and the spell shattered. But it didn't break, it expanded. People began wiping their eyes, murmuring to each other in hushed, reverent tones. Jake found his voice. "What's her name?" "Emma," Sarah managed. "Emma Hayes, she hasn't spoken in almost 2 years." Jake looked at Rex, then at Emma, then back at Rex. His partner's eyes held a wisdom that transcended species. The dog knew exactly what he'd found, a soul that needed saving. "I think," Jake said slowly, "Rex and Emma need to be friends." Time fractured into before and after. Before Emma touched Rex, the world was silent. After, everything changed. The massive German shepherd lowered himself completely to the ground, lying down so that his head was level with Emma's. It was a submission posture Jake had never seen Rex perform, not for suspects, not for other dogs, not even for Jake himself. Rex's brown eyes locked onto Emma's with an intensity that made Jake's breath catch. Emma's small hands, which had hung lifeless at her sides for 18 months, came alive. She reached forward tentatively, her fingers trembling as they made contact with Rex's fur. The moment stretched, elastic and strange, as if the universe was holding its breath. Then Emma did something that made Sarah's knees buckle. She smiled. Not a polite, automatic smile, not the vacant expression she sometimes wore when people cooed at her. This was real, a genuine, radiant smile that transformed her entire face, reaching her eyes for the first time since the accident. It was like watching sunrise after an endless night. "Oh my God," Michael whispered, his voice breaking. "Oh my God, that's my daughter, that's my baby girl." Rex's tail began a slow, deliberate wag. He inched forward on his belly, closing the gap between them, and Emma wrapped her small arms around his neck. The crowd gasped collectively as the 3-year-old buried her face in the dog's fur. A sound emerged, muffled but unmistakable. Emma was making noise. Not words, not yet, but a continuous hum that vibrated against Rex's coat. The dog's eyes closed, and he pressed closer, as if he could absorb her pain through proximity alone. Jake had served in the K-9 unit for 6 years. He'd seen Rex track missing children through miles of wilderness, had watched him take down armed suspects without hesitation, had witnessed the dog's courage in situations that would terrify most people. But he'd never seen this. Rex trembling with the effort of staying perfectly still, every muscle locked in place, barely breathing because the fragile creature in his arms needed stillness more than she needed air. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked, moving closer but not touching, afraid to break whatever spell had been cast. "She won't let us hug her, won't let her grandmother hold her. She pulled away from her pediatrician so violently he thought she was having a seizure." Jake watched Rex's ears. They were tracking every sound, every movement around them, but his body remained committed to Emma. "Dogs sense things we can't," he said softly. "Cortisol levels, emotional states, trauma markers. Rex knows she's hurting." "But why is she responding to him?" Michael asked, his voice desperate with hope. "What does he have that we don't?" "No expectations," Jake replied, the answer coming to him with sudden clarity. "We want things from people, words, smiles, eye contact. Dogs just exist beside us. Rex isn't asking Emma to be anything other than what she is right now." Emma pulled back slightly, just enough to look into Rex's face. Her small hands cupped his muzzle, and she stared at him with fierce concentration, as if trying to memorize every detail. Rex held perfectly still, letting her explore, letting her control the interaction completely. Then Emma's mouth moved. Her lips formed a shape. No sound emerged, but Jake recognized what she was trying to do. "She's attempting to say something," he murmured. Sarah dropped to her knees beside them, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, baby, can you try again?" But Emma's eyes stayed locked on Rex. The dog made a soft sound, not a whine, not a bark, but something in between. Encouraging, gentle, "I'm listening. I hear you even when you can't speak." Emma's face crumpled. The dam that had held back 18 months of silence, of trauma, of isolation began to crack. Her small body shook, and tears spilled down her cheeks, the first tears her parents had seen since the accident. She'd been dry-eyed through everything: the hospital, the doctors, the endless therapy sessions, locked so far inside herself that even crying was impossible. But now with Rex she wept. Sarah reached out instinctively, but Jake caught her wrist gently. "Let Rex handle it," he whispered. "Watch." Rex did something extraordinary. He shifted his position, moving closer, and used his large head to nudge Emma against his chest. Then he wrapped himself around her, not aggressively, but protectively, creating a cocoon of warm fur and steady heartbeat. Emma collapsed into him, her tiny fingers clutching his coat, and sobbed. The crowd had swelled to over 300 people. News of what was happening had spread through the fair like wildfire. Parents held their children, police officers removed their hats, firefighters stood at attention. Everyone understood they were witnessing something profound, something that transcended normal experience. A woman in the crowd, a therapist, Jake would later learn, whispered to her husband, "That's a trauma release. The dog is giving her permission to feel what she's been holding inside. Emma cried for 7 minutes straight. Rex never moved, never wavered, never showed impatience. He simply held her, his breathing deliberately slow and deep, as if teaching her how to breathe again, how to release, how to feel safe in a world that had betrayed her so catastrophically. Finally, the sobs subsided. Emma's breathing evened out. She pulled back once more, her face blotchy and wet, and looked at Rex with something like wonder. Her mouth opened. Her lips moved. "Ar-rar-rar." The sound was barely audible, more breath than voice. "Ar-rar-rar." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Michael stepped forward, hope and fear warring on his face. Emma tried again, her face scrunched with effort. "Ar-rar-rar, Rex." The word, broken, whispered, imperfect, landed like a thunderclap. Rex's reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. The dog's entire body came alive. His tail wagged so hard his whole back end swayed. He made that joyful playbow Jake had only seen a handful of times, dropping his front legs while his rear stayed up. Then he did something that made Jake's eyes burn. Rex gently licked Emma's face, over and over, as if saying, "Yes. Yes, I hear you. You did it." Emma made another sound, this one unmistakable. A giggle, small, rusty from disuse, but real. "She laughed," Michael said, his voice hollow with shock. "Our daughter just laughed." Rex circled Emma once, twice, his movements careful but exuberant. Then he sat directly in front of her and placed his right paw on her small leg. The gesture was deliberate, ceremonial almost. In Rex's world, in dog language, it was a promise. "I'm here. I see you. We're connected now." Emma placed her small hand over his paw. "Rex," she said again, clearer this time. Then looking down at their joined hands and paw, "Good, doggy." The crowd erupted. Applause thundered across the park. People were crying openly, strangers hugging strangers, united in having witnessed something miraculous. But in the center of it all, Emma and Rex sat together, locked in their own world, having just formed a bond that would change everything. Jake knelt beside them, his professional composure completely shattered. "Hi, Emma," he said softly. "I'm Officer Jake. This is Rex. I think he really likes you." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, making eye contact for the first time with anyone except the dog. "Rex," she said again, the word coming easier now. "Yes," Jake confirmed, his throat tight. "Rex." Sarah and Michael were holding each other, both sobbing. Dr. Patterson's words echoed in Sarah's mind. Perhaps it's time to try something extraordinary. This was beyond extraordinary. This was impossible made real. "Can we?" Sarah started, her voice shaking. "Can Emma see Rex again, please?" Jake looked at Rex, who was still staring at Emma with that profound, knowing gaze. Then he looked at the little girl who'd spoken her first words in 18 months. "Yes," he said simply, "as many times as she needs." Emma smiled again, that beautiful, real smile, and leaned back into Rex's warmth. The healing had begun. Sarah Hayes hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emma's face at the fair, alive, present, real, and terror gripped her heart. What if it had been a fluke? What if Emma retreated back into silence? What if that moment with Rex was all they'd ever get? She stood at the kitchen window Tuesday morning, coffee growing cold in her hands, watching the street. Officer Martinez had agreed to bring Rex for a home visit. He'd been hesitant at first, explaining it was outside normal protocol, but something in Sarah's desperate phone call had moved him. "Please," she'd begged. "Emma's been standing at the window since Sunday. She won't eat, won't sleep properly. She's waiting for him." That had done it. 20 minutes later, Jake had called back with an address and a time, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Now it was 9:47, and Sarah felt like she might shatter from anticipation. "Mom, he's here," Michael called from the living room, his voice tight with emotion. The patrol car pulled into their driveway, and Sarah watched something she'd thought she'd never see again. Emma running. Her daughter flew down the hallway, her small feet pounding on hardwood, and burst through the front door before Sarah could stop her. "Emma, wait," but it was too late. Rex was already out of the car, and the reunion was like watching two halves of something whole slam back together. Emma didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. She crashed into Rex with enough force that the 90-pound German Shepherd actually stumbled back a step. But he recovered instantly, his tail wagging with such enthusiasm that his entire back half swung side to side. Jake stood by the car, his throat tight, as Emma wrapped herself around Rex like he was a life raft in a storm. "Hey, buddy, gentle," he said softly, but Rex was already being gentle, impossibly gentle for a dog trained to take down criminals. "Rex," Emma's voice rang out clear as a bell, and Sarah gasped. "Rex, you came back." 6 words, a complete sentence, the most her daughter had spoken in 18 months, and she was using them on a dog. Michael appeared beside Sarah, his arm around her shoulders, both of them frozen in the doorway. "Is this real?" he whispered. "Tell me this is real." Jake approached slowly, giving the family space to process. "She's been waiting for him," Sarah managed. 3 days just waiting. "Rex hasn't been the same either," Jake admitted. "He's been restless, kept going to the car, whining at the door. I've never seen him like this." For the next 30 minutes, Emma didn't leave Rex's side. Not for a second. She sat on the living room floor with the dog sprawled beside her, her small hands buried in his fur, her face pressed against his neck. She hummed, a constant, soothing sound that vibrated between them. Sarah brought out toys, books, Emma's favorite stuffed animals. Emma ignored them all. Only Rex mattered. "Can I get you coffee?" Michael offered Jake, desperate for something normal to do with his hands. "Thanks." Jake settled into a chair, but his eyes never left Rex and Emma. The dog was in what Jake privately called therapy mode, completely still, barely breathing, every ounce of his considerable focus on the small human beside him. "Has she said anything else?" Jake asked, "since the fair?" Sarah shook her head. "Just Rex, over and over. That's the only word she'll say." Her voice cracked. "I know we should be grateful, but—" "You want her to say Mama," Jake finished gently. "I get it." "Is that selfish?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Should I just be happy she's speaking at all?" Jake leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "When I was 7, I had a teacher named Mrs. Chen. She was the only person who understood I wasn't stupid. I just learned differently. For 6 months, I would only talk to her. Not my parents, not other teachers, just her. My mom was devastated." He paused, remembering. But Mrs. Chen told her, "He's learning it's safe to have a voice again. Once he knows that, the words will come." And they did. Sarah wiped her eyes. "So we wait." "We wait," Jake confirmed, "and we let Rex do what he does best." An hour passed, then 2. Emma showed no signs of tiring, no indication she wanted Rex to leave. She'd begun tracing patterns on his fur, circles, zigzags, shapes that meant something to her. Rex lay there, patient as stone, occasionally licking her hand or nuzzling her gently. "Does she understand he can't stay forever?" Michael asked quietly. As if she'd heard, Emma's head snapped up, her eyes wide with sudden panic. She grabbed Rex's collar with both hands. "No," the word burst out of her. "Rex stays mine." Jake started to stand, but Rex was already responding. The dog shifted, pressing more firmly against Emma, making a low, soothing rumble in his chest. Emma's panic didn't fade, but it didn't escalate either. "Emma," Jake said softly, moving to sit on the floor near them. "Rex has to go home sometimes. He has a job." But he looked at Sarah and Michael, making a decision that was probably going to get him in trouble with his sergeant. "What if Rex came back? Would you like that?" Emma's grip on Rex's collar tightened. "When?" That word, when, it was perfect grammar, perfect context. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Thursday," Jake suggested. "Rex could visit on Thursday." Emma looked at Rex as if checking with him. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. She turned back to Jake. Thursday, she agreed solemnly. Then quieter, promise. I promise, Jake said, and he meant it. The goodbye was excruciating. Emma clung to Rex, her small body shaking with the effort not to cry. Sarah knelt beside her daughter. Emma, baby, Rex will come back. Officer Jake promised, but he has to go now. Don't want him to go. Emma's voice was muffled against Rex's fur. Rex made that questioning whine, then did something remarkable. He gently pulled away from Emma, not rejecting her but creating space, and sat down directly in front of her. Then he lifted his right paw and placed it on her knee, just like he had at the fair. Emma hiccuped, tears streaming down her face, and placed her hand over his paw. Thursday, she whispered. Rex's tail wagged. Yes, Thursday. Jake clipped on Rex's lead, his own eyes suspiciously bright. As they walked toward the door, Emma called out, her voice small but clear. Bye, Rex, I love you. Rex stopped, pulled against the lead, and looked back. His tail wagged slowly, deliberately. Then Jake saw something that made his blood run cold with wonder. Rex looked directly at Emma and made a sound. Not a bark, not a whine, but something that sounded almost like words trying to form in a dog's throat. Emma smiled through her tears. He said bye, she told her parents with absolute certainty. Rex said bye to me. In the car, driving back to the station, Jake's hands shook on the steering wheel. Rex sat in the back, his head turned toward the direction of the Hayes house, whining softly. I know, buddy, Jake murmured. I know. Thursday feels like forever away to me, too. He pulled out his phone at a red light and texted his captain. Need to talk. I think Rex and I found our real calling. It's not what you think. Behind them, in the Hayes living room, Emma stood at the window, her hand pressed against the glass, watching the patrol car disappear. Sarah and Michael stood on either side of her, holding each other, holding her, holding on to hope. Thursday, Emma whispered to the empty street. Thursday, Thursday, Thursday. It was the most she'd spoken in 18 months. And it was just the beginning. Visit 3. The calendar on the Hayes refrigerator had a red circle around the date, Tuesday, October 15th. Emma had crossed off each day since Rex's last visit with a purple crayon, counting down like a prisoner marking time. The October wind scattered crimson and gold leaves across the backyard as Jake's patrol car pulled up at exactly 10 a.m. He'd learned quickly that punctuality mattered to Emma. She'd been at the window since 9:30, her nose pressed against the glass, her small body vibrating with anticipation. This time, when Rex emerged from the car, something was different. The dog moved with purpose, pulling against his lead with unusual insistence, his eyes locked on the front door. Jake had felt it during the entire drive, Rex's restlessness, his focus, as if the dog knew something significant was about to happen. Emma burst through the door wearing her favorite yellow dress, the one Sarah had finally convinced her to put on by saying, "Don't you want to look pretty for Rex?" Rex, Emma's voice rang out, and she launched herself off the porch steps. Jake barely had time to unclip the lead before the reunion happened. Emma and Rex collided in a tangle of fur, laughter, and joy so pure it hurt to witness. The dog was making sounds Jake had never heard, whimpers of happiness, small yips of excitement, that rumbling purr-like sound deep in his chest. Hi, 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 Rex, Emma chanted, her arms around his neck. I missed you so much. Did you miss me? Did you? Complete sentences, questions, pronoun use. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her hand over her heart, tears already streaming. Michael stood behind her, gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. She's been talking, Sarah said to Jake, her voice wondering. Since yesterday, full sentences, but only about Rex, only ever about Rex. Jake nodded, understanding. He's her safe place, her bridge back. They moved to the backyard, where autumn had painted the world in fire colors. Emma and Rex settled into their usual spot on the grass, but today felt different, charged with possibility, electric with potential. Emma talked to Rex like he was a person. She told him about her breakfast. I had pancakes, but they weren't very good because Daddy made them. About a bird she'd seen. It was blue, Rex, so blue like the sky. About a dream she'd had. You were there and we were flying. Rex listened to every word, his head tilted, his eyes never leaving her face. He responded with small sounds, tail wags, the occasional gentle lick to her hand. A conversation between species, between souls. Inside, Jake sat with Sarah and Michael at the kitchen table. Through the window, they watched Emma's hands gesturing animatedly as she talked to Rex. Dr. Patterson called yesterday, Sarah said. She wants to see Emma next week. She's calling it miraculous progress. She wants to study Rex, understand what he's doing that therapy hasn't been able to achieve. It's trust, Jake said simply. Rex doesn't want anything from Emma, doesn't expect her to be anything other than exactly what she is in each moment. That kind of acceptance, it's rarer than we think. Michael shook his head in wonder. She asked about him constantly. When is Rex coming? How many more sleeps until Rex? What if Rex forgets about me? It's like she's making up for 2 years of silence all at once, but only for him. Give it time, Jake advised. The words will spread to you too. Rex is teaching her it's safe to speak again, once she really knows that. A sound from the backyard cut him off. All 3 adults froze. Emma's voice clear as crystal. Rex, I'm going to tell you a secret. They watched as Emma leaned close to Rex, her small hands cupping his face, her forehead pressed against his. The dog went completely still, as if sensing the importance of this moment. When the car crashed, Emma whispered, but in the autumn quiet her voice carried through the screen door, I was so scared. There was noise and glass and Mommy was crying. And I tried to talk but no words came out. They got stuck inside and I couldn't find them anymore. Sarah's hand found Michael's, both of them frozen, barely breathing. But you found them, Rex, Emma continued, her voice thick with emotion. You found my words. They were hiding, but you knew where they were. You're magic, Rex. You're my magic dog. Then Emma pulled back and looked Rex straight in the eyes. I love you, Rex. You're my best friend in the whole world. You saved me. Rex's reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. The dog threw back his head and howled, a long, powerful, primal sound that echoed across the neighborhood. It wasn't aggressive or mournful. It was triumphant, joyful, a victory cry that seemed to say, she's back. She's really back. Emma laughed, a real, full, beautiful child's laugh that shattered the last remnants of the silence that had held her captive. Rex began to play Bo over and over, his front legs dropping while his rear stayed up, his tail wagging so hard his entire body curved. Then he did something Jake had never seen in 6 years of partnership. Rex began to spin in circles, round and round, like a puppy, like pure joy given canine form. Emma clapped her hands, delighted. Look at you, you're dancing, Rex, you're dancing for me. And Rex was. The dignified police dog, trained to be serious and focused, was utterly undone by a 3-year-old's declaration of love. He spun 3 more times, then bounced, actually bounced, his front paws leaving the ground, playing like he hadn't since he was a puppy. Jake stood slowly, moving to the back door, his vision blurred. What he was witnessing transcended his understanding of canine behavior. Rex wasn't just happy. He was celebrating the miracle of a silent child finding her voice, celebrating the bond they'd formed, celebrating life itself. Emma ran toward Rex, and the dog caught her gently in mid-leap, both of them tumbling onto the soft grass in a tangle of giggles and barks. They rolled together, Emma's yellow dress tangling, Rex's tongue lolling, both of them lost in pure, uncomplicated joy. Then Rex did the thing that made Jake's knees buckle. The dog stopped, sat down, and placed his paw on Emma's chest, directly over her heart. Emma mirrored the gesture, placing her small hand on Rex's chest. I hear you, Emma said softly. Your heart is talking to my heart. Rex made that sound again, the one that almost sounded like words trying to form, and leaned forward to touch his nose to Emma's nose. Sarah collapsed against Michael, sobbing, "Our baby's back. Oh God, Michael, our baby's back." But it was Jake who understood the full magnitude of what had just happened. Rex hadn't just helped Emma find her voice. He'd given her permission to feel again, to trust again, to love again. The dog had walked into her darkness and led her back to the light. And in doing so, Rex had found his own true purpose. He wasn't meant to chase criminals or track suspects. He was meant for this, for healing broken hearts, for loving unconditionally, for being exactly what hurting souls needed when they needed it most. Emma looked toward the house, and for the first time in 18 months she spoke directly to her mother. Her voice was small, uncertain, but it was there. "Mommy," Emma called, "can Mommy come meet my friend?" Sarah ran. And in that backyard, surrounded by falling leaves and autumn sunshine, a family began to heal. All because one exceptional dog saw a silent child and refused to let her stay lost in the dark. The story hit the local news 3 days after Emma spoke to her mother. A neighbor had filmed the moment in the backyard, Emma and Rex touching nose to nose, the dog's howl of triumph echoing through the neighborhood. The video went viral before Sarah and Michael even knew it existed. By Friday morning, news vans lined their street. Local police dog performs miracle, mute child speaks after 2 years, read the headline on Channel 7. They got it wrong, of course. Selective mutism wasn't the same as being mute, and Rex hadn't performed a miracle. But Sarah didn't have the energy to care about semantics. Not when Emma was sitting at the breakfast table chattering to her father about the squirrel she'd seen outside her window. "Daddy, do you think Rex likes squirrels? I think he would. They're fast like him. Can we tell Rex about the squirrel when he comes today?" Today, visit 5. Emma's world had shrunk and expanded simultaneously, smaller because Rex was her entire universe, larger because she was finally living in it again. Jake arrived at 10 a.m. sharp, but this time a news crew tried to follow him to the door. He turned, his cop voice emerging. "This is a private residence. Back up, now." They backed up. Inside, Jake found Emma waiting with a drawing. "I made this for Rex," she announced, holding up a crayon masterpiece of a yellow stick figure, her, next to a black blob with 4 legs. "Rex, do you think he'll like it?" "He'll love it," Jake promised, his heart squeezing. But something had been bothering Jake for days, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. He'd been researching selective mutism, reading every study he could find, consulting with a veterinary behaviorist and a child psychologist. The conclusion he'd reached was troubling. After Emma and Rex settled in the backyard, Jake asked Sarah and Michael to join him inside. His expression was serious enough that fear flickered across Sarah's face. "Is something wrong?" she asked immediately. Jake chose his words carefully. "I've been watching Emma and Rex, really watching, and I've noticed something important." He paused. "Emma only speaks when Rex is present, not just in the same house, in the same room. I tested it last visit. When Rex went to get water from the other room, Emma went silent again. Complete silence until he returned." Michael frowned. "But she's been talking to us when Rex is here." "Exactly," Jake interrupted gently. "When Rex is here. Have you tried having a conversation with Emma when Rex isn't around?" Sarah's face paled. They had tried. Just yesterday, Sarah had asked Emma what she wanted for lunch. Emma had stared at her, then walked away without a word. Sarah had convinced herself Emma was just being difficult, just being 3. But now... "What are you saying?" Michael demanded, his voice rising. "That Rex is some kind of crutch, that Emma's not really getting better." "No." Jake stood and walked to the window, watching Emma show Rex her drawing. The dog was staring at it with what looked like genuine interest, his tail wagging slowly. "I'm saying Rex is doing something we don't fully understand. He's not just therapy. He's not just emotional support. He's creating a zone of safety so absolute that Emma's trauma literally cannot exist inside it. Sarah's hands trembled, but what happens when Rex isn't there? She retreats, Jake said quietly. I've seen it. The moment Rex is gone, the walls go back up. Not as completely as before, she's making progress, but they're still there. The room fell silent except for Emma's voice drifting through the window. And this part is you flying, Rex. You have wings because you're special. Do you like your wings? So what do we do? Michael asked, his voice hollow. Rex can't live here. He's a working police dog. He has responsibilities, cases, a job. I know, Jake turned to face them. But here's what I've figured out. Rex isn't healing Emma by being present. He's teaching her that speaking is safe. Every time she speaks when he's there and nothing bad happens, she's rewriting the trauma narrative in her brain. It's called exposure therapy, but Rex is doing it instinctively. How long? Sarah whispered. How long before she can speak without him? Jake pulled out a folder he'd brought, printouts of studies, expert opinions, case files. There was a case in Boston, a boy with selective mutism after witnessing violence, worked with a therapy dog for 8 months. First month only spoke to the dog. Second month spoke to family when dog was present. By month 8 he was speaking to his teacher. The dog had essentially become a transitional object, a bridge. 8 months, Michael repeated. That's manageable. But there's something else. Jake's expression grew troubled. I think Rex knows Emma needs him to leave. Sarah blinked. What? Watch them, Jake said, pointing to the window. In the backyard, Rex was slowly backing away from Emma. Not far, just a foot, then 2. Emma followed, closing the distance, but Rex backed up again. It looked like a game, but Jake saw the intention behind it. He's creating distance, Jake explained. Small amounts, testing her, teaching her that space between them doesn't mean abandonment. He's been doing it every visit, a little more each time. As if to prove the point, Rex sat down about 5 feet from Emma. She started toward him, but the dog made a soft sound, not a bark, just a vocalization, and Emma stopped. Rex, her voice was uncertain. The dog's tail wagged. Stay there, you're okay. Emma stood still and something remarkable happened. She began talking to Rex across the distance. Okay, I'll stay here, but you can still hear me, right? I'm telling you about my dream now. There was a big house and you were there. Sarah gasped. She's speaking to him from 5 feet away. And next visit it'll be 6 feet, Jake said. Then 8. Then from another room. Rex is teaching her that her voice carries. That distance doesn't silence her. He's extraordinary. Michael rubbed his face, overwhelmed. I don't understand. How does a dog know to do this? I don't know, Jake admitted. Maybe some dogs are just built different, built to understand trauma in ways we can't. Rex washed out of 2 K9 programs because he was too sensitive. Maybe he wasn't too sensitive. Maybe he was exactly sensitive enough for this. Sarah watched her daughter standing 5 feet from Rex, chattering away, the dog listening intently across the space between them. So this is working. She's going to be okay. She's going to be more than okay, Jake said firmly. But it's going to take time. Rex and Emma need to keep doing this, these visits, this connection. And eventually, Emma will realize she doesn't need Rex right next to her to be safe. She'll have internalized that safety. Carry it with her. Through the window, Rex stood and walked another foot away. Emma's voice faltered, then strengthened. I can still see you, Rex. I'm okay. You're just over there. I'm okay. The dog's tail wagged approval. Yes, you're okay. How did you get so lucky? Michael asked Jake. Finding a dog like this. Jake smiled, but it was bittersweet. I don't think it's luck. I think Rex and I found each other because we're both too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too aware of pain. The world told us that was a weakness, but Emma's teaching us it's actually our superpower. Sarah wiped her eyes. The news is calling it a miracle. It's not a miracle, Jake corrected gently. It's love, unconditional, patient, transformative love. The kind that doesn't give up, doesn't expect anything in return, doesn't ask you to be anything other than exactly what you are. He paused. That's what Rex is teaching Emma, and honestly, it's what Emma's teaching the rest of us. Outside, Emma sat down in the grass. Rex remained 8 feet away. They stayed like that for several minutes, girl and dog, separated by space but connected by something far stronger than proximity. Then Emma spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the autumn air. "Rex, I'm going to try something. I'm going to talk to Mommy. Will you stay right there and watch me?" Rex's tail thumped the ground once. "Yes." Emma turned toward the house. Her parents held their breath. "Mommy," Emma called, "can you come outside? I want to show you something. Rex is here, it's okay." Sarah ran. 1 year later, October 15th, the anniversary of the day Emma first said "I love you" to Rex. Emma Hayes stood at the front of her kindergarten classroom, clutching a poster board covered in photographs. 23 5-year-olds sat cross-legged on the carpet, their eyes wide as Emma, the quietest kid in class for the first 2 months of school, prepared to give her first presentation. Her teacher, Mrs. Robertson, had called Sarah 3 weeks earlier. "Emma volunteered to do show and tell. She wants to talk about Rex, I think she's ready." Now Sarah and Michael sat in tiny chairs at the back of the classroom, holding hands so tightly their fingers had gone numb. Jake stood by the door in full uniform, and beside him, Rex sat at attention, his eyes never leaving Emma. Emma took a deep breath. "This is my best friend, Rex," she began, her voice steady and clear. "He's a police dog, but he's also a therapy dog. That means he helps people who are sad or scared or hurt inside where you can't see." She pointed to the first photo. Emma at 3 years old, her face blank and empty, taken 2 weeks before the fair. "This is me when I couldn't talk. I was in a bad car accident and it made me so scared that my words hid inside me. For a very long time I couldn't find them." Sarah's tears started immediately. Emma was telling her story, really telling it in her own words, to a room full of children. "Then I met Rex." Emma's face transformed, lighting up as she pointed to the next photo, the moment at the fair, her small hand touching Rex's nose. "He didn't care that I couldn't talk. He just loved me anyway, and he made me feel safe enough to try again." A little boy raised his hand. "Did the dog teach you how to talk?" Emma considered this seriously. "Kind of, but not like how Mrs. Robertson teaches us words. Rex taught me that talking was safe, that even if I used my voice, nothing bad would happen. He was patient while I learned to be brave again." She moved to the next photo, Emma and Rex in the backyard, the dog backing away while she spoke to him across the distance. "Rex is really smart. He knew he couldn't stay with me forever, so he taught me that I didn't need him right next to me to be safe. My voice could reach across rooms, across playgrounds, across anything." Mrs. Robertson dabbed her eyes with a tissue. She'd been warned this presentation might be emotional, but she hadn't been prepared for this level of eloquence from a 5-year-old. "Now I can talk to anyone," Emma continued. "My mommy and daddy, my teacher, my friends, even the lunch lady, Mrs. Chen, who always gives me extra fruit." The class giggled. "But I still love Rex the most. He comes to visit me twice a month and we're still best friends." She held up the final photo, taken last week. Emma reading a book to Rex in the Hayes living room, the dog's head resting on her lap. Rex still helps other kids too. Kids who can't talk or who are really sad or who had bad things happen to them. Officer Jake takes Rex to the hospital and to schools. Rex is a hero. Emma set down the poster and walked toward Rex. The dog's tail began to wag immediately. She knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck in a hug that had become their signature move. "Thank you for saving me, Rex," she whispered, but in the silent classroom everyone heard. "I love you forever and ever." Rex made his soft rumbling sound, the one he reserved only for Emma, and gently licked her cheek. The classroom erupted in applause. Children surged forward, asking questions all at once. Can I pet Rex? Does he live with you? Is he magic? Can he help my brother? He gets really sad sometimes. That last question came from a tiny girl named Sophie, and it made Jake's throat tighten. Rex helps lots of kids, he told her gently. If your brother needs help, you can ask your parents to call the hospital. We have a whole program now. Because that was the truth. Emma and Rex's story had changed everything. The Columbus Children's Hospital had established the Rex Initiative, an animal-assisted therapy program specifically for children with selective mutism and trauma-related communication disorders. 6 more therapy dogs had been certified. 17 children had gone through the program. 14 were now speaking. Local news had become national news. People magazine had done a feature. The Today Show had invited them on, though Sarah and Michael had declined, wanting to protect Emma's privacy. But the real impact was quieter, deeper. It was in the emails Jake received weekly from parents across the country, asking how to find therapy dogs for their silent children. It was in the K-9 units nationwide that were starting to rethink what too sensitive meant for a working dog. It was in the trauma therapists who were incorporating animal assistance into their treatment plans. After the presentation, Sarah approached Jake in the hallway while Emma showed Rex to her classmates in the playground. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Last week, Emma had a nightmare about the accident, first one in months. She woke up crying and I thought she'd go silent again. Jake's heart clenched. Did she? No, Sarah smiled through tears. She talked about it, told me she dreamed about the glass and the noise. She was scared, Jake, but she talked. She processed it out loud. She didn't retreat inside herself. She didn't go silent. She's integrated the safety, Jake murmured. It's not just Rex anymore. It's inside her now. Because of Rex, Sarah insisted. Because that extraordinary dog showed her the way back. Through the window, they watched Emma sitting in the grass, surrounded by children with Rex in the middle of the circle. She was explaining how to properly pet a big dog, demonstrating on Rex, who bore the attention with patient dignity. Michael joined them, his arm around Sarah. You know what the crazy thing is, he said. We thought we lost our daughter in that accident, but I think Emma too is even more remarkable than Emma 1. She has empathy now, understanding. She knows what suffering feels like, and instead of making her hard, it made her soft, compassionate. That's Rex's influence, Jake said. He taught her that being sensitive isn't a weakness. Emma looked up, caught Jake's eye, and waved. Then she did something that still amazed her parents every single time. She stood up in front of all those children and yelled, her voice carrying across the playground, across the year of silence, across everything she'd overcome. Officer Jake, Rex says he's thirsty. Can he have water? Jake waved back, his vision blurring. Yeah, Emma, he can have water. That night, after Rex and Jake had left, after Emma was tucked in bed, Sarah found a drawing on the kitchen table. Emma's artwork had improved considerably. This wasn't just stick figures anymore. It showed a little girl with curly hair holding hands with a big German shepherd. Above them, in Emma's careful 5-year-old handwriting, were words that would hang on their refrigerator for years. Rex, teach me my voice is brave. Love, Emma. Sarah held the picture to her chest and cried, not sad tears, but the overwhelming tears of gratitude and wonder. Their daughter had been lost, and a dog, a supposedly too sensitive police dog who'd washed out of 2 programs, had found her. More than that, Rex had taught Emma that broken things could be beautiful, that sensitivity was strength, that love, patient and unconditional, could rebuild what trauma had destroyed. In his house across town, Jake sat on his couch with Rex's head in his lap, scrolling through emails from parents asking about the therapy program. Each one represented a silent child, a desperate family, a hope that maybe, just maybe, there was another Rex out there for them. We started something, didn't we, boy? Jake murmured. Rex's tail thumped agreement. They had started something, a revolution of compassion, a recognition that healing came in unexpected forms, sometimes with 4 legs, a wagging tail, and a heart big enough to hold a broken child until she remembered how to be whole. Emma Hayes had found her voice. But the real miracle was this. In finding it, she'd helped countless others find theirs too. All because one exceptional dog looked at a silent 3-year-old and saw not what she couldn't do, but everything she could become. That was Rex's gift. And it changed the world. The end.